Hello, and welcome, and thanks for attending this week 2 lecture for our science writing class. This week we're kind of going to get into some of the meat of the class, specifically by taking a look at what science is. You know, some of you might have scratched your head thinking why an English class focuses on science writing. And the short answer to that is that science is not as separated from those liberal arts aspects of education, like the value systems that we have, the belief systems that we use, persuasion and communication, as you might think. And so since those of us in the English department who focus on language and communication have studied those kinds of dynamics, the way we do science writing fits really well in how we communicate it, and those important aspects of persuasion especially that good science writing has to enact, just like any kind of writing. So although I am no scientist, the way we communicate our fields is going to kind of look the same to some degree. So we're talking about science writing and science communication. And so the purpose of this first week, and you're going to read chapter 1 out of our text, Writing in the Sciences. You're reading chapter 1 about a couple important concepts. And I guess if I could sum up chapter 1 briefly, I think what I would say is chapter 1 is teaching us how science does not exist apart from the culture and the society, even the morality of our existence, right? So we can't do science, and we can't do science writing without importing a system of cultural beliefs, of social beliefs, and moral beliefs, right? So, and if I were trying to be provocative, I might even say that there is no such thing as objectivity, because a scientist is always going to bring with them that set of frames that are going to bias that person, which doesn't mean you can't do good science. It just means that we have to have an awareness of how science connects to culture and society. And by doing that, we begin to flesh out what good writing is and what good persuasion is. And you'll see a really good example of how persuasion works in that first chapter in terms of science writing. So the purpose is, what is the role of communication in the creation of scientific knowledge? And then you might scratch your head thinking, what does Conway mean by the creation of knowledge? Doesn't knowledge just exist and we discover it? And yeah, in a sense, that's true. When we talk about the creation of knowledge, though, what we're talking about is, let's take Newton's laws, right? Things kind of worked in the universe before Newton's laws, right? So they kind of existed and nature works and things fall from trees and whatnot without our identifying those laws. It's when we identify the laws that the knowledge comes out of that. And so going back to the frame, it's the framing of reality by experiments, by laws, by the creation of those laws, by observation, by equation, by physics, by all those things. It's our attempt to understand what exists there already, but we're always putting it into some sort of framework. That framework could be the physics framework. It could be chemistry. It could be the kind of experiment that a scientist uses to discover what is there. So science becomes a kind of way of framing the universe, a way of understanding the universe. So there are other frames, right? There's literature, there's theology, right? There's fiction, poetry, there's film. There are a lot of ways of understanding the universe as it is. So science is one of those frames, and the frame that we're concerned with here. Okay, so another way to think of science is to think of it in terms of a discourse, and maybe you've heard this term before in your other English classes, but a discourse is a system of language, of beliefs, and the communication of those beliefs in a particular community. And so science is not just about experiment, right, and observation and recording things. It's about communicating that knowledge to other scientists who hold similar paradigms or not. The communication of that knowledge, the collaboration of that knowledge, the articulation of it, and the persuasive element comes in to play when we have kind of revolutionary paradigm shifts where we have to break apart old ways of thinking with new ways of thinking that appear to be more accurate or correct, and that requires persuasion, right? A big shocker might be you do this great experiment, you do this great, awesome, wonderful, piece of writing about it, and people laugh at you. You would think that the experiment by itself would do the trick, but that's not, believe it or not, how it works. So persuasion becomes a big part of that. So science is wed very intimately to our belief systems and our assumptions about a reality that we already possess. And that's called a paradigm. And chapter 1 will discuss that as well. And so just kind of reading off my notes here, a paradigm is a set of beliefs, assumptions, and research and ways of thinking that act as a foundation for our thinking on any subject. So a paradigm and the discourse are very much related together. And so science exists in this context of language and frame and assumption and persuasion and morality, right? It doesn't sit apart from all of that. It's very much embedded within it. And again, that's part of what we do in the English department, is to understand how language and culture affect what we do. And that's, again, why science writing is here with us. So chapter 1 is a great introductory chapter. I'm actually a big fan of this book. I think it does a really good job of making the arguments, some of which I just summarized. One of the things that you'll come across is the, quote, centrality of communication in the sciences. And so it's purporting to lay out how communication works when you do science and when you write about science, as well as persuasion. And here persuasion, actually persuasion has a real kind of dirty connotation. I think of advertising a lot when I think of persuasion, but it's not just that, right? It's logic, it's argumentation, and the style and the presentation of an idea to persuade an audience. And scientists have to do this too, and that's a big part of what we're going to talk about this semester. Okay, so that is kind of the overview for the week. I do want to touch quickly as well on the first writing assignment that you're going to do, which relates very, very well to what we're talking about, which is a memo. What did I call it? A persuasive ethical memo. And what do I mean by that? Basically, the format of this will be a memo form. And so memos are usually only about 1 page long. You can have a second page to use on your works cited list, but it should be in memo form. And basically, it's going to be a mock proposal. All right, so that means you're going to pretend that you work for a given company. It can be a company that you want to work for. It can be a company that you have worked for. And the mock proposal will be that you are an employee for this company and you're going to propose a solution to a problem using good scientific research as your backing for that solution. Okay, I outline everything you need to know about that proposal in the week 2 content, as well as a couple good articles about proposal writing as well. So that will be our first writing assignment. It will be due at the end of week 5, and I'll look forward to hearing about what you guys come up with. Obviously, email me if you have questions. I check my email 6 out of 7 days of the week. I don't check it on Sundays, believe it or not. And so I do try to turn those emails over within a day or two. So please feel free to ask me questions if you have them. And that is all I have for you today. Happy reading, and I'll see you in class. Thanks.